Have you ever wondered how movies get their sound effects? You're going to be as shocked as we were when we discovered that they don't actually use pre-recorded stock sounds. Come on, it's not a sitcom. If they did, we'd know immediately. That's why in this video, we're going to talk about what exactly Foley artists do to give us a fully immersive film experience. First off, what exactly is a Foley artist? When people find out this isn't all done by a computer, they're very confused. To understand what a character's like, you need to know how they feel. Everything a Foley artist makes is recorded at the exact moment it happens, using props. Foley's basically the art of adding sound effects to a film after it's been shot. These artists have to record every sound effect, like when Superman's cape is flying through the air. The job of a Foley artist would be to record everything, including that little cape flutter. When making a movie, the sound's mostly focused on the actor's dialogue, so Foley artists go back and recreate those sounds to add drama and detail and make the movie come to life. Their live sound effects won't be cut from the sound effects library. They work in tandem with the visual effects artist and the editing team. Most of the time, one Foley stage has two Foley artists and one mixer. The sounds captured during filming are replaced by the sounds that Foley artists record well. Even though dialogue's often changed, they don't re-record it. Moving on, why do we need them? You're probably thinking, okay, this job sounds cool, but is it really necessary? Well, basically, even though effects editors can now find thousands of sound effects in libraries and use computer software to make and change their own, it's still hard for them to make some sounds, especially those that have to match the action on screen perfectly. These artists are in charge of making sounds for movies and other media. They come up with creative ways to use anything that can be brought into a recording studio to make the sounds we hear. They use things like car doors, weapons, and fridges full of loud food, even pine cones, because nothing makes the sound of crackling knuckles as they do. Did you know that they use kitchen gloves, which sound like flapping wings when inflated and slapped together? And of course, every kind of shoe you can think of. They're smart observers and sensitive listeners who've got extraordinary ears for sound and motion. They're also capable of thinking creatively and innovatively about acoustic reproduction. Next up, types of Foley sounds. Let's get a little technical. Basically, these types of sounds are all part of diegetic sounds, or the sounds that happen in the world of a movie. Non-diegetic sound, which is usually music or narration, is a totally different thing. That means sound recording's a must, even with the right equipment and tips. When you think about it, every scene has a lot of sounds to take into account. ADR is a different department in charge of re-recording dialogue. It might be the most obvious sound element, but it's not the only one. Let's take a look at the different parts of the job description of a Foley artist. To make footsteps sound like the characters, the Foley artist wears different shoes and walks on different surfaces. Then there's movement. There are too many details that need to be taken care of. Even the smallest movement, like a person crossing their legs while wearing jeans, must make a sound. Foley artist Mark Costanzo uses leaves to make the witch's sound from Into the Woods. In The Big Lebowski, he also used the sound of celery breaking to make the sound of bones breaking. Ever wonder what it would sound like if a stun gun shot grapes? Okay, so what's their process? There's a reason every sound in high-budget movies sounds so real. When working on a movie, the job starts with a spotting session. The whole team gets together to look at the movie and look at the hundreds of necessary Foley effects that the movie's gonna need. This means that the director and all the sound editors are working together. So no, in case you were wondering, Foley artists or editors aren't the same as the sound team. To match the sound and the video to the split second, these artists create, practice, and record sound effects on their studio stage while simultaneously watching the appropriate film sequences in real time. This can take anywhere from a few days to a month. It's not just movies though. They'll also occasionally appear in animated and computer-generated media, video games, and other forms of media. They go to a studio warehouse or storage area and collect all the necessary objects. They put their props together, watch the entire thing again, and generate sounds by acting in sync with it. For instance, they might stamp their feet, crash objects together, and break glass. Now, how is this different from sound effects? We mentioned that the sound team's different. They're kind of the same, but also very different. This is a way of making sounds. The sound effects are the end result. Foley's also added after the film has been finished and edited together. Sound effects, though, are added all along the production process. The major difference is pretty obvious. Unlike generic sound effects like gunshots or explosions, this kind of sound is produced by specific causes, like when an actor's hand brushes against the shirt, and these artists use a ton of tools and props. The sound team literally just uses software. They work in the sound department of a project during post-production under the supervision of a sound mixer. They typically start off as production assistants before advancing within the sound department through their skills and connections. Obviously, not all of the sounds in a movie are created by Foley artists. The sound effects team is in charge of controlling complex noises like computers or car engines. Then, other things that might happen during a Foley recording session. Imagine it's raining outdoors in a scene. How would these artists make the scene convincing for us? Well, they'd use objects like cars, people, traffic lights, the door opening and closing, and footsteps on a marble floor with the character's type of shoes. This happens in scenes where a woman runs into a marble-floored building from the pouring rain. The mumbling of crowds, motorcyclists going by, groups of people walking, children playing, etc. are just a few examples of additional background noises that they think about. Field recordings of these noises would normally be made while filming the scene, but they'll be improvised or recreated during post-production. Some sounds, like chewing gum, are relatively easy to recreate because they just gotta do the same thing, but sounds can be pretty difficult to duplicate. That's why these artists and the crew must come up with creative, unconventional methods to do it. Sometimes the ordinary things that are right in front of us can produce different soundscapes, like beans can simulate smashing seas, rain, or strolling over snow, or you could use a microphone to record different things like electronic devices, and then layer the sounds to create sounds like the infamous lightsaber sound from Star Wars. Oh, and they have a lot of impact on the movie. Your entire day's got sound. Yes, even the quiet moments. That's why sounds in a movie have to be so authentic that we shouldn't think they're fake even for a second. These artists enhance the realism of a scene. A crucial part of storytelling is definitely sounds. The mood that these effects produce helps to immerse us in the narrative. They reproduce background and ambient sounds in the studio to make them louder and more convincing because they're typically not loud enough in a field recording to enhance the action on their own. The lack of Foley effects makes things too quiet. Let's be real. Movies without background noise are too silent. We mistakenly believe the theater's sound system has failed. These artists cover this auditory gap and give scenes a more realistic feel. Finally, can anyone be a Foley artist? Well, the job description isn't as easy as it looks, but let's be real. Who wouldn't want to work a job that's independent and creative? The basic requirement is to have really good hand-eye coordination and hearing. That's because your main job's gonna be to come up with interesting ways to recreate sound for any type of scene. You'll be happy to hear that you don't really need any formal schooling, just basic knowledge of audio production, equipment, and sound recording's enough. Of course, practical experience, even in your own living room, is the best preparation for the job. It's a pretty hands-on job, so it isn't that weird for artists to have experience as actors or dancers. Before getting a career in the sound department, they might begin as an assistant or apprentice to a skilled Foley artist, sound editor, or sound mixer. At the starting level, it's critical to learn from anyone in the field around you. In this case, your coworkers at audio post-production offices and sound studios. This is true for any position in the industry. Before moving on to larger productions, many professional artists start by working on independent and student films. A Foley artist's typical film schedule in the industry might last between 15 and 30 days. Not an easy job, that's for sure. That's a wrap for this video. Is this a job you'd be down to do? Does it look hazardous or difficult to you? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. See you in the next one.